In every corner of the world, there are secrets. Stories that exist beyond logic, beyond reason. Stories that don't want to be understood, only experienced. Tonight, we return to those places. Places where space bends, where shadows are alive, and where darkness never truly ends. Welcome to Dynamic Dark. Welcome to a brand new horror episode. Welcome to episode 72. Welcome to season 2 of Dynamic Dark. I'm Aditya, and today I bring you 3 terrifying haunted stories. New stories. New week. New fear. In our last episode, episode 71, we explored haunted horror creepypasta tales that left many of you unsettled. If you missed it, the link is in the description below. Make sure to check it out. And now, let's begin episode 72. If you are new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell if you dare to see what comes next. Tonight, we'll explore 3 chilling stories, each one more disturbing than the last. The first story is The Sky Was Indoors. The second story is The Ceiling Never Ends. And the third story is The Walls Were Measuring Him. If you love horror like this, then you are in the right place. Because only on Dynamic Dark will you experience classic creepypasta style horror, blended with psychological fear and haunting, unexplained darkness. For the best experience, put on your earphones or headphones. Let the silence, the suspense, and the shadows consume you. And if your room lights are on, turn them off for a more cinematic and terrifying experience. Now, let's begin today's first story. The Sky Was Indoors. Kai had been walking for hours, or was it minutes? He couldn't tell. Time felt stretched, meaningless. The sky, it looked endless. Stars stretched farther than he could imagine. Clouds floated lazily, yet unnaturally still. There was no wind, no sound, no hint of life. He thought he was outside. But the horizon never changed. The edges of the world, they never ended. Every step Kai took felt smaller, insignificant. The vastness swallowed him in silence. Shadows flickered at the corners of his vision. But whenever he turned, there was nothing there. And yet, the feeling remained. Something watched. Something patient. Something unmoving. Kai lifted his eyes higher. The stars shifted ever so slightly. Not naturally, not randomly. They moved as though aware of him. He stepped forward, cautiously. Each footfall echoing unnaturally on the smooth, endless floor. The ceiling, or whatever it was above him, stretched beyond comprehension. Impossible to measure, impossible to reach. He realized the light from the stars wasn't ordinary. It cast shadows that didn't belong to him. Shadows of tall, black figures lurking, watching, still. Kai froze. The silence was no longer empty. It was waiting. He took a slow breath. And then another. The stars shimmered subtly, as if responding to him. And in that moment, Kai finally understood. The sky was indoors. Kai stopped for a moment. The space around him, it made no sense. No walls. No exits. Just endless floor stretching farther than it should. The ceiling above was a blur of stars, shifting slowly, yet nothing else moved. Every direction looked the same. He turned slowly, scanning the edges. Shadows flickered at the corners. But when he focused, they vanished. Something moved just beyond sight. Something patient. He took a cautious step forward. The echo of his footfall sounded unnaturally long, bouncing off nothing he could see. The dome seemed alive. Space stretched and curved in ways it shouldn't. The black figures, tall, faceless, remained still, scattered across the periphery. But their presence pressed against him, heavy, invisible. Kai's breath grew shallow. The farther he walked, the more the floor seemed to expand. His eyes caught movement in the reflected light, shadows he couldn't place. Every instinct screamed to run, yet the scale of the dome made him feel small, insignificant. He tried to call out, nothing came. Silence returned, thicker than before. The artificial stars above shifting subtly, aligning, forming patterns he couldn't read. Every shift, every glimmer made him aware he was being watched. Not by eyes, by the space itself. By the figures. He wanted to turn back. But turning back meant facing the unknown, the black shapes that mirrored his hesitation. Step by step, Kai realized he wasn't just walking through this space. He was being measured. And it was patient. Waiting. Calculating. He exhaled, long and slow, heart thudding. And then he moved forward again, into the impossible, stretching nothingness. Kai froze, staring at the stars above. At first, he thought it was a trick of his eyes. But then, he noticed movement. The stars began to shift. Slowly, carefully, as if following rules. Each star moved with purpose, aligning into patterns he couldn't understand. He blinked. The shapes remained precise, deliberate. A low tension pressed against his chest. The sense that he was not just observing the stars. He was part of the arrangement. The shadows at the edges of the dome. Tall, thin, thick, hunched, elongated, black, faceless figures. Watched silently, unmoving, their presence magnifying the dread. Every movement of the stars mirrored his own hesitation. His own heartbeat. He wanted to step back. But every shift of the stars seemed to track him. Every step forward made the patterns more complex. More aware of him. The vast dome, infinite yet confined, held him like a weightless cage. The floor seemed to tremble under the immensity of the scale. As if reacting to his existence. Kai tried to focus on the shadows again. The ghosts shifted subtly, different shapes, some hunched, some towering. But none moved toward him. The knowledge came slowly, chillingly. The stars were not random. They were observing, calculating, following rules. And the black figures were witnesses. He exhaled slowly. Step by step, heart pounding, he realized. Nothing here was accidental. The space, the sky, the shadows. All of it was alive in its own incomprehensible way. Kai's eyes followed the stars, expecting familiar patterns. But nothing made sense. They weren't forming constellations. Not shapes of animals, not lines in the sky, nothing he recognized. Then it hit him. They were forming numbers. Slowly, deliberately. Digits shimmering faintly in the artificial sky above. Each number appeared, lingered, then faded, replaced by the next. His heart quickened. The black figures at the edges, tall, slender, broad-shouldered, faceless, remained unmoving, silent witnesses to what he could not yet comprehend. Kai stepped forward. Each footstep echoed unnaturally, A small sound in the immense dome. The numbers shifted with each step, almost reacting to him. A sense of being measured, accounted for, pressed down on him. The shadows didn't move, yet their presence was heavy, suffocating. He looked up again. More numbers appeared, forming sequences he couldn't understand. The stars weren't random. The space wasn't empty. The dome, the sky, the figures, all aware. He realized he was being counted. Every moment, every step, every hesitation. Recorded in the patterns above. The dome wasn't showing him the sky. It was showing him himself. And in that moment, Kai understood. This place had always been alive. Always been watching. And always counting. He stepped back. The numbers changed. The shadows didn't. At first, Kai thought it was coincidence. A delayed reaction. Something mechanical catching up. But the timing was perfect. Too perfect. His foot had barely touched the ground. When the sky adjusted, digits dissolved. New ones formed. Smooth. Clean. Certain. The dome felt quieter now. Not empty. Controlled. Kai swallowed and took another step back. Slower this time. Testing. Again. The numbers shifted instantly, as if they had been waiting. He looked around the vast space. The floor stretched endlessly. The ceiling curved beyond comprehension. And the figures. They stood exactly where they were before. Tall. Broad. Human-shaped. Faceless. Not frozen. Not paused. Just complete. Kai realized something unsettling. Movement was unnecessary for them. They didn't react because nothing here required their reaction. He was the variable. The sky confirmed it. Numbers pulsed softly now. No longer chaotic. No longer exploratory. Decisive. Kai's breathing sounded wrong in the space. Too loud. Too organic. He tried to stand still. Held his breath. The numbers paused. Not stopped. Waiting. His heart thumped once. The numbers updated. A cold realization settled in. The sky wasn't reacting to movement. It was reacting to existence. He took one cautious step forward. The numbers changed again. Smaller adjustments now. Fine-tuning. Like a system reaching optimization. Kai slowly turned his head toward one of the shadows. It didn't look back. It didn't need to. He felt seen anyway. That's when it hit him. The figures weren't guards. Guards respond. Guards patrol. Guards threaten. These didn't. They existed the way rules exist. Absolute. Unquestionable. Kai backed away again, panic creeping into his chest. The numbers recalculated faster this time. Confident. Familiar. As if they had done this before. He wasn't the first. That thought landed heavy. The dome didn't feel like a place anymore. It felt like a process. Input. Adjustment. Confirmation. Kai's thoughts began racing. But even that felt monitored. He wondered. If he ran, would the numbers spike? If he screamed, would they stabilize? The shadows still didn't move. They didn't need urgency. Time belonged to them. Kai slowly lowered himself to his knees. The floor was cold. Uncaring. The numbers softened. settled into long sequences. Approval. A terrifying clarity washed over him. This place didn't feed on fear. Fear was irrelevant. Resistance was irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was compliance. Kai understood now why the shadows never moved. They didn't dominate through force. They dominated through certainty. The dome didn't need walls, because escape was never part of the equation. He looked up one last time. The numbers held steady. Final. Satisfied. Kai felt smaller than he ever had. Not trapped. Not hunted. Accounted for. And somewhere deep in the silence, he knew this system would continue long after he stopped moving. The dome wasn't showing the sky. It was counting how long he had been inside it. The realization didn't come all at once. It arrived quietly, like a truth that had always been there. Kai looked up again. The numbers didn't behave like stars anymore. They didn't shimmer. They didn't pretend. They progressed forward, constant, uninterested in him noticing. His chest tightened, not from fear, but from understanding. This place had never reacted to his arrival. It had already started counting. The moment he entered, the shadows around the dome remained unchanged. Tall, still, faceless. They weren't watching him anymore. They were confirming him. Kai wondered what would happen when the numbers stopped changing. Would the dome open? Or would it simply finish? He tried to remember when he had first stepped inside. The memory felt distant, blurred, unimportant. Time didn't belong to him here. It belonged to the system. The numbers slowed slightly, not out of mercy, out of precision. Kai realized then, the dome didn't trap people. It processed them, measured presence, calculated duration, and when enough time passed, it would no longer need him. The shadows didn't move. They never had, because they were not the end. They were proof that others had already been counted. Kai lowered his head. The numbers continued. Indifferent. Final. The second story is, the ceiling never ends. The ceiling was too high to measure, too dark to see, and far too quiet to be empty. Kai stood still, his neck aching as he tried to trace where the ceiling ended. There were no lines, no beams, no visible structure holding it up. Just darkness, stretching upward without explanation. He whispered without realizing it. The sound didn't echo. That's when the silence felt wrong. Big spaces were supposed to answer back. This one didn't. Kai took a slow step forward. The floor responded. Solid, cold, real. But above him, nothing reacted. The ceiling didn't acknowledge movement. It didn't react to sound. It simply existed. He tried to focus harder, waiting for his eyes to adjust. The darkness didn't thin. It didn't reveal details. It absorbed attention. That's when he noticed the figures. Not directly. Never directly. Shapes at the far edges of the space. Tall. Human-sized. Or larger. Black silhouettes standing where walls should have been. Kai's breath slowed. He didn't turn his head. Something told him. The moment he did, the ceiling would feel closer. He realized then. The room wasn't empty. It was waiting. And whatever lived above him didn't need to move to be aware. Lights began turning on. Not all at once. One section at a time. Kai didn't notice the first one immediately. It was too subtle. A faint glow spreading across a distant portion of the floor. The ceiling above it remained dark. The light didn't reach upward. It only revealed what was meant to be seen. Another section illuminated. Then another. Each light arrived without sound. No hum. No click. Just presence. The space felt larger with every section revealed. Not safer. Larger. Kai turned slowly, tracking the pattern. The lights weren't random. They followed an order. One zone at a time. Expanding outward. Avoiding him. That's when he felt it. The unease wasn't about what the lights showed. It was about what they refused to show. As each section brightened, shapes appeared at the edges of visibility. Not moving. Not reacting. Just already there. Human-like silhouettes. Different in height. Different in build. All faceless, all black. The lights never turned on where they stood. Darkness protected them. Kai's breathing slowed as the realization settled. The room was not being revealed. It was being staged. The lights continued their methodical advance. One section. Then the next. The illuminated areas formed a path. Not leading forward. Leading around him. Kai stood in the only unlit space left. The silence deepened. The shadows did not move closer. They didn't need to. The room already knew exactly where he was. Every light revealed something new. Something that hadn't been there before. At least that's what Kai told himself. The first illuminated section showed nothing unusual. Just floor. Just space. The second revealed marks. Faint impressions pressed into the surface. As if something heavy had once stood there. Kai frowned. He was sure the floor had been clean before. Another light activated. This time, a shadow appeared. Not attached to anything. Not cast by any source. Just a shape, stretched across the ground. Waiting. Kai's throat tightened. He didn't move. The next section brightened. A silhouette now stood where the shadow had been. Tall. Still. Faceless. He blinked. The figure remained. More lights turned on. Slowly. Methodically. Each one added something. A second figure. A third. Some closer. Some farther. None of them moving. Kai began to understand the pattern. The lights weren't revealing the room. They were updating it. What existed depended on what was illuminated. He took a careful step forward. The nearest light activated. A new figure appeared beside him. Close enough to feel. Not touching. Not breathing. Just present. Kai froze. The room was no longer empty. And it was no longer finished. The lights weren't helping him see. They were checking how much space he occupied. The thought settled slowly in Kai's mind. Not as panic. As certainty. He looked at the illuminated sections again. The pattern was too clean, too precise. Each light stopped exactly where his presence ended. Not past him, not around him, just enough. Kai shifted his weight. The nearest light adjusted. Not brighter, not dimmer, closer. The space responded instantly, like a system correcting itself. He stretched his arm outward. A new section activated beside it. That's when the realization became impossible to ignore. The room was measuring him in real time. Width, height, movement. Not to understand him, to define him. Kai slowly turned in place. The lights followed. Smooth, silent, accurate. At the edge of each illuminated zone, the black figures stood unchanged, faceless, motionless. They were not part of the measurement. They were the reference. Kai felt smaller with every adjustment. Not physically, functionally. The room wasn't expanding for him. It was limiting him. He stopped moving. The lights froze. Waiting. The silence deepened. Kai understood now. This place didn't care who he was, only how much of it he consumed. He stepped forward. The lights adjusted. The ghosts did not. Kai felt the change before he saw it. The floor brightened just ahead of his foot. Precise and immediate. The space recalculated him. He paused. The lights paused too. Perfect synchronization. He looked toward the nearest figure. It remained exactly where it was. Unaffected. Unincluded. Kai took another step forward. The illuminated zones expanded smoothly, reshaping themselves around his movement. But the silhouettes at the edges remained untouched by the light. That's when the hierarchy became clear. The lights served the system. The system served the figures. And Kai was beneath all of it. He tested the space. A step to the side. The lights followed instantly. The ghosts did not. No reaction. No correction. They did not need adjustment. They were already correct. Kai's chest tightened. The room did not respond to fear. It responded to presence. He stood still again. The lights locked into place. Waiting. The figures remained silent. Dominant. Unchanging. Kai finally understood. Control did not belong to movement. It belonged to those who never needed to move at all. The hangar was never empty. It was a container. And he was what it was built to hold. The realization didn't shock Kai. It settled. Like something that had always been true. He looked around the vast space again. The scale finally made sense. Not excessive. Exact. The ceiling wasn't high by accident. The floor wasn't wide by chance. Every distance, every shadow, every measured section of light existed for a reason. For him. Kai took a slow breath. The hangar didn't react. Containers don't respond to what they carry. They only ensure nothing leaves. He thought back to the beginning. The silence. The lights. The figures that never moved. None of it was meant to scare him. Fear was unnecessary. The system didn't require cooperation. It required presence. Kai understood now why the ghosts never stepped closer. Containers don't chase their contents. They simply remain intact. The black figures stood where they always had. Not guards. Not hunters. Structural constants. Proof that the hangar had done this before. Kai lowered his head slightly. The lights stabilized. No longer adjusting. No longer checking. Finished. He realized the most disturbing part wasn't being trapped. It was being appropriate. The space fit him perfectly. As if he had been expected. As if the hangar had been waiting for the correct occupant. Kai stood still. The system no longer needed updates. The container was full. And nothing needed to change. And the third story is, the walls were measuring him. The warehouse felt alive. Silent. Endless. And he was just a small part of it. Kai stepped inside. The floor stretched endlessly beneath his feet. The ceiling rose impossibly high above. He tried to gauge the walls. But they shifted. Not visibly. Not quickly. Slowly. Subtly. Adjusting to him. Every move he made, the space responded. Not to guide him. Not to help him. But to account for him. The silence was heavy. No hum. No echo. Just a quiet awareness. Shadows lingered at the corners. Black figures, faceless, motionless. Not moving toward him. Not reacting to him. Simply existing. As constants. Kai tried to step forward. The walls seemed to recede slightly. Just enough to let him pass. But the space behind him didn't expand. It was precise. Measuring. Every step. Every turn. Every inch of presence. Kai realized then. He was not exploring the warehouse. He was being measured by it. And the shadows. They weren't watching him. They were the witnesses. Constants in a system that didn't need him to understand it. He noticed the walls weren't still. They moved silently. Just enough to shift the space around him. At first, Kai thought it was his eyes playing tricks. The warehouse was massive. The ceiling high, the floor endless. But every step he took, the walls seemed to adjust. Not quickly. Not violently. Subtly. Smoothly. Almost as if the space itself was breathing. Shadows lingered at the corners. New black humanoid ghosts, faceless, tall and varied, completely still. They weren't watching him. They were anchors. The walls slid just enough to maintain their position relative to him. Kai stopped. The walls paused too. The silence deepened. He took another step. The space widened slightly. The walls recalculated instantly. The ghosts didn't move. They didn't need to. It wasn't about interaction. It was about control. Every light, every shadow, every subtle movement. Serving one purpose. To define him. To measure how he occupied the space. Kai realized he was no longer exploring. He was being contained. And the warehouse didn't care if he understood. Distances kept changing. The markers on the floor disappeared. The space was alive and aware. Every step Kai took felt different than before. Corners stretched, walls slid, ceilings shifted. Shadows lingered at the edges. Black faceless humanoid ghosts, tall, motionless, watching silently. The warehouse didn't just exist. It reacted. It measured. And it knew him better than he knew himself. It wasn't shrinking around him. It was measuring him. Every step he took, it recorded. Kai stopped walking. The warehouse didn't react immediately. A pause. As if confirming the data. Then the space adjusted. Not to trap him. Not to block him. To fit him. The walls aligned subtly. The ceiling recalculated its height. The floor smoothed itself beneath his feet. Everything optimized. For him. Kai realized the warehouse wasn't hostile. It was precise. Cold. Indifferent. He walked again. The distance ahead shortened. The distance behind stabilized. No wasted space. No excess. Black figures stood embedded in the architecture. New ghost variety partially merged with walls and floor, faceless, uneven forms, translucent edges dissolving into shadow. They didn't acknowledge him. They marked fixed points. Reference values in a living equation. Kai understood then. This place wasn't built for movement. It was built for calibration. His height. His stride. His hesitation. His breath. All of it registered. When he slowed, the space slowed. When he hesitated, the walls paused. Not waiting for permission. Waiting for accuracy. The realization settled heavily. He wasn't inside a warehouse. He was inside a system. And systems don't need fear. They only need data. The ghosts remained unchanged. Because they had already been measured. Already processed. Already finalized. Kai was still updating. He tried to move faster. The walls didn't care. The ghosts didn't move. Only the space did. Kai picked up his pace. His footsteps echoed differently now. Not louder. Not quicker. Just recalculated. The warehouse responded instantly. Distances compressed ahead of him. Expanded behind him. He wasn't outrunning anything. He was feeding it more data. The walls adjusted faster than his body could. Smooth. Silent. Absolute. Kai stopped suddenly. The space stabilized around him in less than a second. Perfect symmetry. No wasted air. The black figures remained fixed. Faceless. Uneven. Partially merged into the structure. They didn't acknowledge his urgency. They didn't need to. He tried again. Faster. Desperate. The floor smoothed itself under his stride. The ceiling adjusted its height. Nothing resisted him. Nothing helped him either. That was the dominance. Not force. Not pursuit. Control without opposition. Kai understood then. Speed meant nothing here. Fear meant nothing. Only compliance. The warehouse didn't stop him. It let him move. Exactly as much as it allowed. He realized too late. The warehouse wasn't empty. It had been waiting. And it knew him. So that was the end of episode 72 of Dynamic Dark. If these chilling tales and haunted stories made you shiver, tell us in the comments which story kept you awake tonight. The most terrifying comment. I, Aditya, will pin it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications bell so you never miss our next descent into the unknown. And share this video with your friends and family if they can handle the fear. Have a haunted location, creepy encounter, or urban legend to share? Drop it in the comments. The idea with the most likes will be featured in our next episode. Episode 73 is coming soon, where we will dive deep into creepypasta horror stories, uncover darker mysteries, cursed places, and secrets that linger where the shadows never sleep. Stay tuned, keep watching, and dare to explore the terrifying unknown with Dynamic Dark every episode at 7:45 p.m.